I now want to introduce to you Ann Barker. Ann Barker is a Labor member for Oakley, and I'll let her do all the talking now. Thank you, Ann.
Well, thank you very much, Judy, and thank you very, very much to Stephen, who continues to inspire me on so many occasions. As Judy said, I am the member for Oakley, and my name is Ann Barker. And I'm here today to tell you that I stand with you in your call for a state-led, independent, statutory inquiry into the internal processes of the Catholic Church in regard to clergy sexual abuse. I've called for that inquiry, and I will continue to work towards this desperately needed inquiry to happen now. In 2010, thank you. In 2010, I attended a book launch in Oakley. As well as taking a copy of Hell on the Way to Heaven, written by Chrissy Foster and Paul Kennedy, home with me, I heard an amazing, articulate and incredibly strong and dignified woman speak about her and her family's suffering following the sexual abuse of two of her daughters by the parish priest during their early years of school. This inspiring woman is Chrissy Foster. Since that time, a great woman. Since that time, Chrissy and Anthony have continued to work with me to provide me with so much more guidance, information and expertise. I also undertook to find out more about how an inquiry could be undertaken, and I looked to Ireland because of the extensive amount of work that had already been undertaken in this very Catholic country. As well as just sourcing information, I travelled to Ireland in July this year to talk to those who had initiated this action in Ireland and undertaken the inquiries. I also met in Ireland with government authorities to learn more about their response to the findings and recommendations of those inquiries. I was very, very fortunate. Justice Sean Ryan, Justice Yvonne Murphy and Colm O'Gorman, who was the person who basically started these inquiries in Ireland, a person who was raped and abused by a Catholic priest as a boy and a young man, and went on to write and publish a book as Chrissy has done. And they all agreed to meet with me. All were very, very helpful and gave me a great deal of their time to discuss all of the aspects of their inquiries. What worked, how something could be done better, how they overcome resistance to getting those inquiries started, and even how they could assist me and all of us in our efforts to have this inquiry in Victoria. Coincidentally, I arrived in Ireland as the Cloyne report was published, the second of the inquiries held by Justice Yvonne Murphy. This report investigated complaints of child sexual abuse and how those complaints were dealt with by church and state authorities in the Cloyne diocese between 1996 and 2004, at a time when the Catholic Church stated they had implemented detailed procedures for dealing with child sexual abuse or allegations of child sexual abuse. And we all know that what was found was that the Church in this diocese absolutely and completely ignored these internal procedures. I witnessed and read the community and government outrage at the findings of the Cloyne report. One of the most important events that I witnessed was the response by the Irish Parliament. As a Parliament, not as individual members of Parliament, not as separate political parties, but as a whole Parliament, they stood as one to deplore and condemn the Vatican for their intervention, which contributed to the undermining of the child protection frameworks and guidelines of the Irish state. Importantly, Taoiseach Enda Kenny said, "This is not Rome, but a republic of laws, of rights and responsibilities, of proper civic order, where the delinquency and arrogance of a particular version, of a particular kind of morality will no longer be tolerated or ignored." He said that Irish law would always supersede canon law that have neither legitimacy nor place in the affairs of this country. There is no difference between Ireland and Victoria. It is here in this building behind me that laws are passed to govern this state of Victoria. It is state law, state policy, state practice which we abide by, and we expect individuals and organisations to abide by. The investigation of crime and working to guarantee as far as possible the protection of children is the responsibility of the state. And if there has been a major failure within society in regard to child protection, it is the state which has the responsibility to investigate how such failures happened and to look at law, policy and practice to try and mitigate against failures in the future, perhaps beyond even the institution that may have been the subject of an inquiry. There are some that will say, and there are some that say to me already, that the Catholic Church is dealing with this matter. There is Towards Healing, there is the Melbourne response. There are internal protocols that they indicate have been implemented. But the fundamental issue is that whatever the Church may do, the obligation still rests with the state to investigate crime and to provide as far as possible across its jurisdiction for the protection of children and vulnerable adults. This is not a matter of faith, it is a matter of child protection, and the responsibility for those issues rests with the state. As legislators, the state cannot say that any agency, be it a sports club, a religious body or any community organisation, is outside the rule of law within our jurisdiction. If the rights of our citizens are violated, and particularly where our children are violated, legislators cannot say there is no state law or state-established legal process through which they can gain justice and have their rights vindicated. Equally, all organisations in Victoria, including churches, must recognise that it is state law, practice and process which overrides any internal processes, and that they have a responsibility to participate in and uphold state law, practice and process, particularly where it relates to reporting of abuse and alleged abuse of children. And that is why a state-led independent statutory inquiry into the internal processes of the Catholic Church in regard to clergy abuse must be held now, and it must be a statutory inquiry which has the power to legally recover documents and compel witnesses to give evidence about reports of abuse and how those reports were dealt with by church and state authorities. I know this needs to happen now, you know this needs to happen now. And as I said, while I commit to you my support and ongoing commitment to make this inquiry happen, I also ask for your help. There are 128 members of the Parliament, I'm one of them. There are 88 in the Legislative Assembly, there are 40 in the Legislative Council. I will continue to call for the inquiry, and I will continue to work to talk to colleagues, to talk to other members of Parliament and ask them to stand as one with me to uphold the rights of our citizens. But I ask you to ensure that you know who your state Member of Parliament is, Legislative Assembly and Legislative Council. If you don't already have that information, find it. Write to them now and ask them to support the immediate establishment of an independent statutory inquiry. If they ask to hear your story, then tell them. But the most important thing to do is to focus